Hi guys, so today you're going to familiarize yourself with some of the most commonly used Photoshop tools that are used to make everyday adjustments to things like color, contrast, hue and saturation, and exposure. These are the tools that most people use regularly in Photoshop. You're not always doing fancy stuff like cutting out heads and putting them on other bodies. So these are the things that you do just to make those small enhancements to your photos. So by now you've analyzed some Instagram filters and you should have a pretty good idea of what is going on in each filter. Today you're going to edit your own photo to look like any Instagram filter of your choosing. So if you haven't done so already, you should have edited your photo in Instagram first so that you have something to reference during this activity. So right here on my screen I have the photo I'm going to be editing. In my other tab I have the Instagram version. So I just put the Instagram filter on it. I have that one and this one, so I can kind of click back and forth and see if it's starting to look like the Instagram filter that I chose. So the way that you do this, I'm not going to go through my whole filter, but I just want to familiarize you guys with where you're going to find the tools that you need to use. So over here on the right side above your layers palette, you have this adjustment section. If you don't see it, it might be here, libraries, so just click on that adjustments tab. And if you hover over all of these little icons, it'll tell you what they do. So we have brightness and contrast, hue and saturation, color balance, levels, black and white, curves, all these different things. If you go to the top of your screen, and mine looks a little different because I'm on a Mac and you're on a PC, but at the top you have your image adjustments and then you have all of the same things in there. So there's a couple different places to find the tools that you need. But there's some pros and cons to using each one. So for example, if I go to the top to image adjustments, hue and saturation, and I enhance my saturation, and I'm doing it exaggerated just so you can see the difference. I up my saturation and then I hit OK. Now it made that change to my picture. So now let's say I want to go to image adjustments, brightness and contrast, and I turn my brightness way down and my contrast way up, and I say OK. But let's say, I change my mind, I want to undo some of those things. You always have your little history tab up here, but otherwise you'd have to just step backwards until it gets back to the original version. So one thing that's nice about the adjustments over here on the right is that if I click my hue and saturation, it creates a new layer here that's specifically for my hue and saturation. So I can turn my hue and saturation up, I can click my brightness contrast, it'll make a new layer of my brightness and my contrast. And what that means is now I can click these layers on and off and see what the difference is. And let's say I don't like the brightness contrast, you know what? Maybe I didn't need to do that for this filter. I can just delete it. And then I still have my saturation done, but it didn't undo all of my changes to the picture. So whichever way you do it is fine, but I think that using the layers is helpful because then if you need to undo something, it makes it a little bit easier to do that way. So you want to look back and forth between each photo. So I'm just going to show you where to find these things. So you want to play with these different things. If you're not sure what something does, play around with it. So you can go to your levels, make some changes just to see kind of what it does. And then if you go to image adjustments, oops, see I got to get back on my background layer. So that's another thing. You have to pay attention to make sure you're on the right layer because that's where we usually mess up is being on the wrong layer. So if you're using the adjustments over here, you are creating new layers, you need to make sure you click back to your background layer. So if I go to image and adjustments, there is this option for a photo filter. And what that will do is there's warming filters, there's cooling filters, there's different types of filters that'll change the hue a little bit. This magenta filter is starting to kind of help make it look like this. It's a little too intense, so I'm going to have to make some other changes to it. But you'll notice kind of down in the bottom you get that kind of magenta type filters there. So hopefully this gets you a little bit of an idea of what you need to be doing for this activity. So using this adjustments palette, going to image and adjustments and just play around with these different things and try to get your picture to look as close to an Instagram filter as possible. So what you're going to be turning in, and it has all of this in the directions on Haiku, you're going to turn in a slideshow, a Google slideshow that has 3 photos side by side. So your original photo, your Instagrammed version from Instagram, and then your Photoshop version, so that we can kind of do a side-by-side comparison. And then now here is, again, the really, really important thing. You need to make note of what you are doing. So I would need to go here and say, okay, I turned my saturation up to positive 50, plus 50. My levels, here are my adjustments. So I changed the middle lever to 1.60, the bottom one's at 0, and the upper one's at 255. If I changed my brightness, maybe it goes up to 40, maybe it goes down to negative 54. But you need to pay attention to all of these little numbers here and make note of those as you go along, because you need to give me that explanation. That's your proof for this project. Your proof is showing me, telling me step by step what you did. If I went to image adjustments and, oopsie, gotta click back on my layer, image adjustments, photo filter, then I would want to specify I used the magenta filter at 25% density. So you want to, again, make sure you are taking notes of every little step you make and every little change, because that is a big part of your grade for this. So hopefully that helped you guys out. If you have questions, you know where to find me, but it's really just an experiment. You're experimenting with these different tools, figuring out what they do, and trying to copy to the best you can an Instagram filter. Now, of course, mine don't look alike, but this was just to show you guys where to find the things that you need. All right, good luck.